Good afternoon. I would like to welcome Mr. George Wagner to Adams County Agriculture today. Mr. Wagner has spent 6 decades involved in local agriculture, and today we are going to talk to him to learn what he has witnessed changing in ag, what his thoughts are on the direction of ag, and maybe get some insight on his thoughts for the future of industry. Good afternoon, Mr. Wagner.
Afternoon, Daniel.
Mr. Wagner, I'd like to start with what has been your career in ag. When did you start, and what jobs have you held?
Well, Daniel, I started when I was 8 years old, picking cherries in the local orchards. I did that pretty much through high school, and then I moved on to working for a local cooperative. Agway was the name of it. And from there, I became a salesman selling dairy feed, and then became the manager of a feed mill for Cargill.
Mr. Wagner, you really have had a long and varied career in ag. Your orchard work, wasn't that hard work at such a young age?
Well, it was certainly hot, and I thought I was tired back then, but all we did was we picked the cherries. The orchard had like a support staff that came and they'd set your ladders for you, and you go up the ladder and you pick all the cherries you could reach, and then you'd holler and they'd come and move the ladder to the next place, and you'd do it all over again.
Is that still the way cherries are harvested today?
No, not at all, Daniel. What they do now, they have what they call a shaker, and it's just a machine with big tarps, almost like an upside-down umbrella. And the machine grabs a hold of the trees and just shakes the guts out of it. All the cherries fall down on the tarps and roll into the buckets. You know what's interesting? When I was a kid, if we shook cherries and picked them up, we got in trouble. You were never allowed to shake the trees.
Wow, so that job really has changed. Seems like a lot less work, isn't it?
I'm sure it's less work. When we were kids, it was a lot of work, but looking back on it, what I remember is the good times, kind of like, eating under the cherry tree in the shade with your sisters, and then kind of kicking back and taking half a snooze and stuff. I don't really remember the work. I remember more the fun and the conversations.
That's a very interesting way to look at it. Almost sounds like my upcoming high school graduation. You get excited about the accomplishment and already starting to forget what work went into it.
Yeah, I guess that would be real similar. Same idea.
Let's move into your adult life and what you have experienced there. What time frame did you start your adult ag career?
I graduated high school in 1980, and I went to college for a couple years. And so it was the early 1980s that I would have started working.
And you said you worked mostly with dairy farms?
I did. When I originally got hired, I was working. Everything we ever did was always with dairy farms. I drove a spray truck, and in the spring, and then when that work was done, then we drove feed trucks.
The trucks you drove, really like the ones we see now with the tanks and the long augers on the sides and the big wheeled trucks for spraying?
Well, they did the same job, but our trucks did more jobs than just one. The spray trucks nowadays, that's the only thing they can do. The truck I drove was actually a 4-wheel drive pickup that had a slide-on sprayer, just like a slide-on camper, and you could take it off and it was a 4-wheel drive pickup.
How about the feed trucks?
Exactly the same thing. Now the feed trucks are tanks, and the feed just funnels out, goes into the augers and into the bin. The truck I drove was basically a box dump truck. You'd raise the bed to dump the bulk feed, but you could also haul bags in it. We hauled an awful lot of bags when I was starting out.
So it kind of seems like things have gotten more specialized or task specific, you could say.
They really have. That's one of the bigger differences I see. Everything is, it does the job really well, but it's the only job it can do.
So that's kind of like the zero-turn mower I have. Mows grass great, but it can't really push snow like a lawn tractor would.
Exactly. That's the exact same idea.
As a salesman and manager, you would have a fair amount of first-hand knowledge of farms and how they were worked, wouldn't you?
I would, Daniel. It's amazing. The dairy farms, to get the most from their cows and from their business, they really invite you in. Like, you sit at their kitchen table and you go over the books and you talk about their goals and their plans.
With that insight and knowledge, what is the biggest change you've seen in the last 40 years?
Without a doubt, it's the number of farms and the size of the farms. When I started out, we probably had 300 farms that made up our customer base. And those 300 farms probably milked 50 cows average. I mean, there was bigger ones, but 50 cows was the average. Now, the same place there was 300 farms, we probably have 50, And the largest farm we have right now has 3,000 cows.
Whoa.
I mean, the average is probably 300 cows per farm.
Is that a change for the better, you think?
Well, Daniel, I don't know. You know, I'm pragmatic enough to think the efficiencies of it, there's no doubt it's way more efficient this way. But yet, when I drive down a country road, you know, an old back road, and I see a bank barn on this side of the road, and you go a half mile further, there's a bank barn on the other side of the road. It's really sad when you think what used to be and you know, things like that.
I've never really thought to look at old barns like that. Almost like monuments on a battlefield. Each barn is kind of a statue to our rural history. It is sad, though, to think of all the family businesses that have ended.
Yeah, it really is sad, and that's an excellent point. I never really... It is. It's like each barn is like a statue on the battlefield. You're traveling the roads and thinking, you know, this business was here, and that business, just like on the battlefield, you know, where this regiment was there, or this corps did this. It's the exact same idea.
Mr. Wagner, thank you very, very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
One last question I would like to ask you, though. Are you old enough to remember what it's like to work with horses and to remember when tractors came to be?
I may be gray, but I'm not that old. But when I started in the orchards, you know, the old guys that I worked with, they did actually work with horses. My generation really didn't see a huge change. You know, we saw things get better and safer and more efficient, and everything, you know, got bigger. But we didn't have a life-changing event like all of a sudden there was no horses and we went to tractors. We didn't have that kind of thing. Kind of like you guys with computers. You know, you guys, my goodness, you can make videos about any old thing now. Like you're all stars on YouTube. It's nuts.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. It has been a pleasure talking with you this afternoon.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Please be with us next week as we go away from a look back and instead look far and forward. Next week's show will be drones. Can they be our eye in the sky and really allow us to farm without leaving the kitchen? Did you drive trucks at all?
Yeah, I drove a spray truck.
Start over.
That is excellent. That is excellent that you thought of that.
Restart that question. Say something about the barn so I can start talking about the monument. You want to read your answer?
I thought that was pretty good.
You just repeated what I said. Wow, you were crazy.
We definitely were. Oh my gosh. Do you folks even write with a pen anymore? Oh wait, I'm interviewing now.
Wow, you have not aged well. You look way older than you are.
Oh my, Daniel, get out of here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Wagner. It has been a pleasure talking with you this afternoon.
Lizzie, I don't think we can edit out the corona. Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me. You just do it right. Thank you.
Can I say, thank you, Mr. Wagner. It has been a pleasure talking with you this afternoon.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure for me.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. It has been a pleasure talking to you this afternoon.
Thanks, Daniel. I had a great time. What? Why do we have that stupid silence?
Please be with us next week when we go away from a look back and instead look far and forward. Next week's show will be drones. Can they be our eye in the sky and really allow us to farm without leaving the kitchen?